The grand imperial palace of Vexa Prime stretched across the horizon like a mountain made of glass and gold. Its towers reached so high that clouds wrapped around them like scarves inside. Its greatest hall, the leaders of the 7 most powerful empires in the galaxy had gathered for a summit that would decide the fate of worlds. Emperor Zekai of the Vexery sat upon his throne of polished obsidian. His scales shimmered with colors that shifted like oil on water. 4 arms rested on the armrests of his seat, and his vertical pupils watched the gathered delegates. With barely hidden contempt, the Vexery had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They considered themselves the oldest and wisest of all civilized species. To his left stood the delegation from the Kroth Collective. These beings resembled giant insects, with armor plating of natural chitin. Their mandibles clicked in constant conversation that only they could understand. They had come with promises of trade and threats of war, as they always did. The Selenari floated their containment spheres across the hall. They were beings of pure energy, who had long ago abandoned physical form. Their light pulsed in shades of blue and purple as they communicated through electromagnetic waves. They considered themselves above the petty concerns of flesh and bone. Representatives from the Torn Federation occupied a full corner of the room. These massive beings stood 3 meters tall, with gray skin like stone and eyes that burned with inner fire. They were warriors by nature and had conquered half their galaxy before the other species forced them to the negotiating table. The Whisper Court sent only 3 members, as they always did. These thin, pale beings with too many joints in their limbs were masters of information and secrets. They never spoke above a whisper, and it was said they knew things about every species that could destroy empires. The bright assembly arrived in robes of woven light. They were humanoid in shape, but their skin was translucent, showing the glow of their internal organs. They preached peace and harmony while building weapons that could crack planets in half. And finally, in the smallest corner of the great hall sat the human delegation. There were only 5 of them. Dr. Sarah Chen led the group as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. She was a woman in her 50s with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many diplomatic failures. Beside her sat 3 junior diplomats who tried very hard not to look terrified. Earth had only been part of galactic civilization for 20 years. They were still considered children playing at the adult table. The 5th human was not a diplomat at all. Marcus Webb pushed a cleaning cart across the polished floor, his mop leaving streaks of water that quickly dried in the climate-controlled air. He was 67 years old, with a face full of wrinkles and hands that had known hard work. His gray uniform marked him as maintenance staff. Nobody looked at him twice. Nobody ever did. Emperor Zeka raised all 4 of his hands for silence. The hall fell quiet. Immediately, we have gathered here to discuss the artifact, he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by hidden technology. 3 cycles ago, the exploration vessel Seeker found a dead world at the edge of known space. On that world, in a vault that had waited for millions of years, they found this. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the hall. It showed a crystalline tablet about half a meter tall. Strange symbols covered its surface in neat rows. They seemed to shift and move when viewed directly as if they were alive. Our greatest minds have studied these markings, the Emperor continued. Every translation matrix in the Vexor database has attempted to decode them. We have found nothing. The language does not match any known species, living or dead. The Kroth representative stepped forward, its mandibles clicked rapidly as a translation device spoke for it. The collective has also analyzed the symbol. We found 17 possible linguistic patterns, but none produced coherent meaning. The Selenari have scanned a tablet with every sensor at our disposal. One of the energy beings' pulse, the crystalline structure, is older than our recorded history. The material does not exist in any known periodic table. We believe it was manufactured by a species had vanished before any of us achieved sentience. One by one, each delegation reported their failures. The Torn Federation had tried to force the tablet to reveal its secrets through concentrated energy. It had absorbed everything they threw at it. Without effect, the Whisper Court admitted they had no records of anything similar in their vast archives. The Bright Assembly had prayed to their gods for guidance and received only silence. Emperor Zekai listened to all of this with growing amusement. When the last delegation finished speaking, he let out a laugh that echoed through the chamber. So the greatest minds of 7 empires cannot read simple scratches on a rock, he said. How pathetic we have all become. Perhaps we should ask the primitives from that little blue world. Maybe their cave drawings will help them understand. Laughter rippled through the hall. Dr. Chin kept her face carefully neutral, but her hands tightened into fists beneath the table. The other human diplomats stared at the floor. In the corner, Marcus Webb continued mopping. His eyes, however, had drifted to the hologram. He tilted his head slightly, the way a person does when they hear a familiar song from long ago. I will make a wager, Emperor Zeka announced, spreading all 4 arms wide. Just to lighten this dreary summit, I will give all my gold to anyone who can translate these markings. Not just some gold, all of it, the entire treasury of Vexa Prime vaults that have been filling for 10,000 years. More laughter filled the whole. The Vex treasury was legendary. It contained wealth that could buy entire solar systems. Your magnificence, the Torn representative rumbled. You risk nothing with such a wager. No one can translate the untruable. Exactly. The Emperor smiled, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth, which makes it the perfect bet or reward. No risk. The treasure of my ancestors is safe. The summit continued. Delegates argued about who should have custody of the tablet. The Kroth wanted it for study. The Selenari claimed their energy-based nature made them the only ones who could safely contain such an artifact. The Tauran Federation suggested that whoever could take it by force should keep it as nature intended. Through it all, Marcus Webb mopped the floors. He moved slowly around the edges of the great hall, invisible to beings who considered themselves too important to notice a cleaning servant, but his path brought him closer and closer to the holographic display in the center of the room. He stopped just a few meters away, pretending to clean a spot that was already spotless, his eyes fixed on the symbols floating in the air before him. His lips moved silently, forming shapes that had not been spoken aloud in over 1,000 years. The more he looked, the more certain he became. It wasn't possible. It made no sense. But Marcus Webb had spent 40 years of his life studying exactly this kind of impossibility. He looked around the hall. At the arguing aliens, he looked at the human delegation sitting quietly in their corner, ignored by everyone. He looked at Emperor Zekai on his throne of Blackstone, laughing at his own cleverness. Marcus thought about his life. He thought about the years he had spent teaching at Oxford, filling young minds with knowledge of ancient civilizations. He thought about the budget cuts that had closed his department, about the bills that had piled up, about the gradual slide from professor to substitute teacher to manual labor. He thought about his small apartment and his pension that barely covered food. He thought about all the gold in the vexillary treasury. Then he shook his head. Gold meant nothing. Empires meant nothing but this tablet, the symbol, this message from across time and space. This meant everything. Marcus Webb set down his mop. He walked across the polished floor toward the human delegation. Every step felt like a mile. His heart hammered against his ribs. He was a janitor about to interrupt a meeting of galactic emperors. He reached Dr. Chun's table and leaned down to whisper in her ear. His words were soft enough that no translator device could pick them up. Ambassador, he said, I need to speak with you. It's an LT Uncan GT about the tablet. Dr. Chen looked at him with confusion. She had seen him cleaning the embassy building back on the neutral station. She knew he was just maintenance staff, but something in his eyes made her pause. What about it? She whispered back. Marcus Webb took a deep breath. He looked at the hologram one more time, confirming what he already knew in his heart. I can read it, he said. I can read every word. And Ambassador, when I tell you what it says, you're going to want to sit down. Dr. Chan's face went pale. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Across the hall, Emperor Zekai noticed the commotion at the human table. He smiled that needle-tooth smile and called out in a voice dripping with mockery, is there a problem with our primitive guests? Perhaps the cleaning servant has lost his mop. The entire hall turned to look at the humans. Dr. Chen felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes pressing down on her. She looked at Marcus Webb, this old man in his gray uniform with his weathered hands and his quiet certainty. She made a decision. Your Magnificence, she said, standing slowly, I would like to request the floor. Emperor Zekai's laughter echoed through the chamber like thunder. The other delegations joined in. There are various sounds of amusement filling the silence in the grand imperial hall. Lasted for exactly 7 heartbeats. Marcus Webb counted them. Then chaos erupted. Every delegate spoke at once. The Croth representatives clicked their mandibles so rapidly that their translation devices gave up and produced only static. The Selenari pulsed with such intensity that their containment spheres flickered dangerously. The torn Federation delegates rose to their full 3M height, fists clenched as if they might fight the very air around them. Only Emperor Zekai remained still on his throne. His 4 hands gripped the armrests of his obsidian seat, and his shifting scales had frozen into a dull gray. His vertical pupils were fixed on Marcus with an intensity that could have burned holes through steel. You lie, the Emperor said, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. The hall fell silent again. You attempt to deceive this summit with claims so absurd. They insult our intelligence. A dead Language from a primitive world on an artifact that predates your species by millions of years. Marcus did not flinch. He had faced hostile audiences before. Budget committee meetings could be just as dangerous as alien emperors. In their own way, I make no claims about how this is possible, he said calmly. I only state what I see. These symbols are Latin. I have studied Latin for most of my adult life. I taught it at one of Earth's oldest universities for 35 years. I know this language the way you know the color of your own blood. Prove it. The Whisper Court representative hissed. Their pale face showed no expression, but their two long fingers twitched with barely contained tension. Translate something, anything, show us. You are not simply a fool seeking attention. Marcus nodded. He looked up at the hologram and found the first line of text. The symbols that had defeated thousands of experts suddenly made perfect sense to him. It was like hearing a song from childhood after decades of silence. The first line reads, "Fellest hawk noun," he said slowly. In English this translates to the children of Earth. This message, Dr. Chen gasped. The other human diplomats stared at Marcus with expressions of pure shock. They understood the implications, even if they did not understand Latin. Children of Earth, the torn representative rumbled, your artifact speaks directly to humans. This is either the greatest coincidence in cosmic history or the greatest lie. Continue, Emperor Zekai commanded. His voice had lost its mocking tone. Something darker had replaced it. Translate more. We will see if your words make sense or if they are simply random sounds designed to trick us. Marcus took a deep breath. He studied the floating symbols, working through the ancient grammar in his mind. Latin was a complex language with rules that bent and shifted based on context. This dialect was old, far older than anything he had encountered in Roman texts, but the foundations remained the same. The second passage reads, Multiani proarin ex quo vosre possumus. Marcus said, many years have passed since we placed you upon earth. The hall went completely still. Even the Salinari stopped their constant pulsing. Placed. The Croth representative clicked. Placed upon earth, you were saying. Humans did not evolve on their own world. I am saying what the tablet says. Marcus replied, I make no judgments about its truth. You asked for translation, not interpretation. Continue, Emperor Zekai repeated. His voice had become very quiet. Every word. Translate every word. Marcus worked through the text line by line. The process was slow and careful. Some phrases used constructions he had never seen before, forcing him to work backward from context, but the message became clearer with each sentence. We are the architects, he translated. We shaped worlds when the universe was young. We seeded life across the void between stars. Your kind was our final experiment, our greatest hope. Dr. Chen had risen from her seat. She walked slowly toward the center of the hall, drawn by the impossible words flowing from the old janitor's mouth. Earth was chosen for its harshness, Marcus continued, a world of extremes, fire and ice, storm and calm. We made it difficult because we needed you to become strong. Only the strong could carry our legacy. The torn Federation delegate made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. Humans strong. They die from temperature changes that our younglings would not notice. They cannot breathe underwater or survive in vacuum. They live perhaps a century, if They are lucky, the tablet does not. Define strength as physical power. Marcus said, still reading, it speaks of adaptability, creativity, the ability to imagine what does not yet exist and then make it real. These, it says, are the true measures of a species worthy of the stars. He paused at a new section, frowning slightly as he worked through the grammar. This next part is interesting, he said. It reads, Vas nan soli estis, other worlds were seeded. Other children were raised, but none were told the full truth. Only to you do we send this message, for only you were meant to remember. Remember what? The bright assembly representative asked. Their translucent skin had flushed within a light, betraying their agitation. Marcus found the answer further down the tablet. His face changed as he read it, showing an emotion that might have been wonder or might have been fear. The tablet says, when the children of Earth remember their origins, the time of reunion will be at hand. The architects will return to judge what has become of our scattered seeds. Those who have grown in wisdom will be welcomed. Those who have grown only in cruelty will be pruned like dead branches from a tree. Implications of those words settled over the whole like a weight. Every delegate understood what it meant. Somewhere out there, beings of unimaginable power were watching, waiting, preparing to judge whether the civilizations of the galaxy deserve to exist. This is madness, Emperor Zekai said, but his voice lacked conviction. Ancient beings who created all intelligent life, who placed humans on their world as some kind of experiment. It sounds like the mythology of primitives, not the truth of the cosmos. With respect, your magnificence, the Whisper Court representative said, our own ancient texts speak of the sky gardeners, beings who shaped our world before the first of our kind drew breath. We always assumed these were myths. Now I wonder if they were memories. The Kroth have similar legends. The insectoid delegate admitted. The first hive speaks of those who came before, who prepared the soil in which our species would grow. One by one, the delegations acknowledged similar stories in their own histories. Gods who created the world, beings who existed before time, shepherds who guided young species toward the light. The details differed, but the core remained the same. Marcus continued, translating. The tablet spoke of a great exodus, a time when the architects withdrew from the galaxy to let their children grow without interference. It spoke of tests and trials that each species would face as they reached for the stars. It spoke of the tablet itself, describing it as one of 12 scattered across the galaxy, each containing a piece of a larger message. When all 12 tablets are gathered, Marcus, read, the full truth will be revealed. The location of the architect's home, the purpose for which all species were created, the destiny that awaits those worthy of it. Emperor Zekai leaned forward on his throne. His earlier fear had transformed into something else. Greed, ambition, the look of someone who saw an opportunity beyond imagining. 12 tablets, he said softly, 12 pieces of a map, 2 beings who could create life itself. Think of the power, think of the technology they must possess. Whoever controls this knowledge would control the galaxy. The tablet warns against such thinking. Marcus said he had reached a new section, and his voice grew heavy as he read it. It says the tablets will reveal themselves only to those who seek wisdom, not power, those who gather them through force or Deception will find only ashes. The unworthy will be known by their actions, and their punishment will be swift. Warnings written millions of years ago. The emperor dismissed with a wave of his 4 hands threats from beings who may no longer exist. We should not let ancient superstition prevent us from claiming what is rightfully ours. Rightfully yours, Dr. Chen spoke up, her voice sharp. The message is written in our language. It is addressed to our species. If anyone has a claim to this tablet, it is Earth. Earth is a child playing with toys it does not understand. The emperor snapped. You have been part of galactic civilization for 20 years. We have ruled for 10,000. You expect us to hand over the greatest discovery in history because it happens to use your primitive scratching. Primitive scratching, Marcus said quietly, that none of your 10,000 years of wisdom could decode. The insult landed like a blow. Emperor Zekiah's scales flushed with color, a sign of rage among his species. He rose from his throne and descended the steps toward the center of the hall. You forget yourself, servant, he hissed. You stand in my palace, in my empire, surrounded by my guards. Life continues only because I allow it. Marcus did not step back. He had faced angry students, frustrated administrators, and academic rivals who wanted his position. An alien emperor was just another bully with a bigger stick. I am simply a translator, he said calmly. I read what is written and speak what it means. If you Marcus Webb worked through the night, the summit had been suspended while he translated, but no one left the great hall. Attendants brought food and drink for the delegates. No one offered anything to Marcus. He did not ask. The holographic display of the tablet floated before him like a ghost made of light. His voice had grown hoarse from hours of speaking, but he did not stop. Each line revealed more of the message that had waited millions of years to be read. Dr. Chen sat nearby, recording everything on a small device. The other human diplomats had been sent to contact Earth with updates. This discovery would change everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. They needed to prepare their governments for what was coming. The architects watched from beyond the veil of stars. Marcus translated. They saw their children spread across the cosmos, reaching for each other through the darkness. Some children grew wise and gentle, others grew cruel and hungry. All were loved, but not all would survive the final test. What test? The Croth representative demanded. It had moved closer over the hours, drawn by the words. Despite itself, the tablet keeps mentioning tests and trials. What does it mean? Marcus found the relevant passage and frowned as he worked through the grammar. It says, the test is not of strength or cunning or power. The test is of the heart. When the children remember their origins, they must choose what to do with that knowledge. Those who seek to control will be controlled. Those who seek to destroy will be destroyed. Only those who seek to understand will find what they are looking for. Riddles. Emperor Zekiah muttered from his throne. He had not moved in hours. His scales had settled into a dull gray color that matched his mood. Ancient riddles from beings who speak in circles. Perhaps, Marcus said, or perhaps the message is exactly as clear as it needs to be. The architects seem to value certain qualities over others. Humility over arrogance, wisdom over power, cooperation over domination. Easy philosophy for beings who already possess ultimate power, the torn Federation delegate rumbled. Of course. They preach restraint, they have nothing left to gain. Marcus shook his head. Slowly. I do not think that is what the message means. The architects did not keep their power, they gave it away. They created life across the galaxy and then stepped back to let that life grow. On its own, that suggests they believed there is something more valuable than power. What could be more valuable than power? The Emperor asked. The question seemed genuine rather than rhetorical. Purpose, Marcus replied. Legacy, the knowledge that you have created something that will outlast you. That is what the architects valued. That is why they made us. They wanted to know that the universe would continue to grow and change and wonder even after they were gone. The hall fell silent as the delegates considered this. For beings who had spent their lives pursuing power and territory, the idea of voluntarily giving it up was almost incomprehensible. Yet here was evidence that the most powerful beings in cosmic history had done exactly that. Marcus continued translating through the next section that described the other 11 tablets and their locations. Though the descriptions were vague, they spoke of worlds at the edge of light and darkness, of places where time moved strangely, of realms that could only be reached by those who had learned certain truths. A scavenger hunt, the whisper court representative observed. They have hidden the pieces of their message and want us to search for them. More than that, Marcus said. The tablet says that only certain beings can find each piece. The first tablet, this one, could only be translated by someone who remembered the old language. The second can only be found by someone who has looked death in the face and chosen mercy. The third requires a being who has lost everything and still hopes. It's a specific requirements. Dr. Chen noted. They testing character, not just intelligence. It seems that way, Marcus agreed. The architects are not just hiding their message, they are selecting who will be worthy to receive it. Emperor Zekai stood on his throne, and who decides worthiness? Who judges whether a being meets these vague requirements? Marcus found the answer in the next passage. His expression changed as he read it, showing something that might have been surprise or might have been understanding. The tablets themselves decide, he said. They are not just messages. They are aware in some limited way. They can sense the nature of those who approach them. The worthy will be allowed to proceed. The unworthy will find only blank stone. Aware, the Selenari pulse with alarm. The artifacts are alive, not alive in the way we understand it, Marcus said. More like they contain an echo of the architects themselves, a fragment of their consciousness left behind to guide the search. When someone approaches a tablet, that echo evaluates them and decides whether to reveal its secrets. Then we must study this tablet further. The Croth representative clicked. If we can understand how it thinks, we can perhaps fool it into revealing the locations of the others. The tablet addresses that possibility, Marcus said. With a thin smile, he had reached a section that seemed almost to anticipate this very conversation. It says those who approach with deception will see truth. Those who approach with violence will see peace. The tablets cannot be fooled because they do not judge words or actions. They judge the soul itself. Souls, the Emperor scoffed. Now we are discussing mysticism. Perhaps next you will tell us the architects were gods who demand worship and sacrifice. Marcus shook his head. The tablet specifically says they were not gods, they were simply beings who existed for a very long time and learned things that younger species have not yet discovered. They speak of the soul not as a religious concept but as a pattern, a structure of thought and memory and experience that makes each being unique. They can read that pattern the way we might read a book. The translation continued. The tablet described the fate of species that had tried to claim the architect's legacy through force. One had discovered a tablet and attempted to use it as a weapon. The tablet had revealed itself to be hollow, containing nothing but ash and a simple message. Not yet. Another species had captured a being they believed worthy and tried to force them to decode the tablets. The worthy being had died rather than submit, and the tablets had sealed themselves forever against that species. The punishments are severe. The bright assembly representative observed, the architects do not forgive those who break their rules. They are not punishments, Marcus said quietly. They are consequences. The architects are not angry at those who fail their tests. They are simply protecting their message from those who would misuse it. A locked door is not a punishment. It is simply a door that certain people cannot open. And what happens to those who do open it? Emperor Zethkai asked. What reward awaits the worthy? Marcus reached the final section of the tablet. It was longer than the others and written in a more formal style, as if the author wanted to ensure every word was perfectly clear. When the 12 tablets are gathered, Marcus translated slowly, and the message is complete, the children will know the truth of their creation. They will know why they were made and what destiny awaits them. They will be given a choice to accept the legacy of the architects and continue their work, or to refuse it and follow their own path. A choice. The Croth representative clicked with surprise. They give a choice. The architects believe in freedom, Marcus explained. They created life not to control it, but to set it free. They hoped their children would choose to continue their mission of spreading life and wisdom across the universe, but they knew some might choose differently. Either choice is acceptable to them. The only failure is not choosing at all. And if we choose to accept, Dr. Chen asked softly, what? Then Marcus read the final lines of the tablet. His voice had grown very quiet, and every being in the hall leaned forward to hear him. Those who accept will receive the architect's gifts, knowledge that spans millions of years, technology that can reshape reality itself, the ability to do what the architects did, create new life, new worlds, new possibilities. But these gifts come with a responsibility. The children must promise to use them only for creation, never for destruction. They must become architects themselves, not rulers or conquerors. And if we refuse, the emperor asked, then we continue as we are. The tablets return to their hiding places. The architects fade into history and legend. The galaxy belongs entirely to its current inhabitants to make of it what they will. The choice once made cannot be unmade. If we refuse, the offer will never come again. The weight of those words settled over the hall like a blanket of snow. Every being present understood what was being offered. Ultimate power and ultimate responsibility, or continued freedom and continued ignorance, the chance to become something more than they were, or the comfort of remaining exactly as they had always been. Emperor Zekai rose from His throne, he walked slowly to the center of the hall and stood before Marcus, looking up at the holographic tablet with an expression no one could read. "You have translated the entire message?" he asked. "I have," Marcus replied. "Every word, and you believe it is genuine, not a hoax or a trick?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I believe the tablet is genuinely ancient. I believe the language is genuinely Latin, in a form so old it predates any written records on Earth. I believe whoever created this." After 3 days passed after the summit ended, Marcus Webb sat alone in his small quarters aboard the diplomatic station, staring at the stars through a window no larger than his hand. The room was barely bigger than a closet, a narrow bed, a tiny desk, a shared bathroom down the hall. It was the best accommodation available for maintenance staff. The door chimed. Marcus rose slowly, his joints protesting after so many hours of sitting. When the door opened, he found Dr. Sarah Chen standing in the corridor with 2 armed guards behind her. "Professor Webb," she said formally, "would you come with me, please?" Marcus looked at the guards. "Am I in trouble?" "Quite the opposite," Dr. Chen replied with a small smile. "Earth wants to meet the man who just made our planet wealthy beyond imagination." They walked through the station's corridors together. Marcus noticed that people stopped and stared. As he passed, aliens of every species watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to fear to something that might have been reverence. Word had spread quickly through the galaxy. The Vexery treasury arrived this morning, Dr. Chen said as they walked. Every coin, every gem, every precious artifact collected over 10,000 years. Our economists are still trying to calculate the total value. The current estimate is somewhere around the combined GDP of Earth for the next 500 years. Marcus nodded slowly. "That seems like a lot." "It is more than a lot, Professor. It is everything. Earth went from being a minor power barely tolerated at galactic summits to being one of the wealthiest civilizations in existence overnight. Because you remembered a dead language." They reached a conference room where a holographic display showed Earth blue and green and beautiful, hanging in the darkness of space like a jewel. Around the display sat a dozen faces Marcus did not recognize. Politicians, he assumed. The kind of people who made decisions about other people's lives. "Professor Webb," one of them said, rising to greet him. He was a tall man with silver hair and the practiced smile of someone who had spent his life in front of cameras. "I am Secretary General Harrison. On behalf of Earth and all its people, I want to thank you for what you have done." Marcus sat down in an empty chair. "I translated a tablet. Anyone who knew Latin could have done the same, but they did not know Latin." Another politician said. She was younger with sharp eyes. "That missed nothing. That is the point. None of the great alien empires bothered to study dead languages from primitive worlds. You knew something they did not, and that knowledge changed everything. Which brings us to why we wanted to speak with you, Secretary General." Harrison continued. "Professor Webb, we need your help, not just with this tablet, but with what comes next." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What comes next?" A new face appeared on the holographic display. It was a woman in a military uniform, her expression serious. "Professor, the tablet mentioned 11 more artifacts scattered across the galaxy. It said only certain Beings could find them being with specific qualities. I remember Marcus said one requires someone who faced death and chose mercy, another needs someone who lost everything but kept hoping. The requirements were different. For each, we have been analyzing those requirements. The military woman continued cross-referencing them with personality profiles and psychological evaluations. We believe we can identify candidates who might qualify for each tablet. That sounds very organized. Marcus said carefully, it has to be. Secretary General Harrison replied, every species in the galaxy will be searching for those tablets now. The Vexri are already mobilizing their entire exploration fleet. The Kroth Collective is offering bounties for any information about the artifacts. The Torn Federation has declared that any tablet found will be property of their empire regardless of who finds it first. A race. Marcus said, you are turning this into a competition. We did not make it a competition. The Sharpie politician replied, the other species did. We are simply responding to reality. If Earth does not search for the tablets, others will find them first, and whoever controls the architect's legacy will control the future of the galaxy. Marcus was quiet. For a moment, he looked at the image of Earth floating in the display, so small against the vastness of space. The tablet warned against that kind of thinking. He said finally, it said, those who seek to control will be controlled. Those who approach with the wrong intentions will find nothing. We are not approaching with wrong intentions, Harrison assured him. We simply want to ensure that Earth has a seat at the table, that humanity is not left behind while other species claim our birthright, Marcus repeated. You believe the message truly. You believe humans were created by the architects to inherit their legacy. We believe it is possible, the military woman said, and if it is true, we cannot afford to let that legacy fall into hostile hands. Professor, the other species look at us and see primitives, children playing with toys. We do not understand. If they gain control of the architect's technology, while we have nothing, what do you think will happen to Earth? Marcus thought about the way Emperor Zekai had laughed at the human delegation. He thought about the contempt in the alien's voice when he called Earth a primitive world. He thought about the thousands of years humans had spent as the lowest species in the galactic hierarchy. What do you want from me? He asked. We want you to lead the search, Harrison replied. Not the entire operation, of course. We will provide ships, crews, resources, whatever you need, but you are the only human who has successfully interacted with an architect artifact. You understood what the tablet was saying. Not just the words, but the meaning behind them. We need that insight. I am 67 years old, Marcus said. I have bad knees and worse eyesight. I spent the last decade pushing a mop because no one wanted to pay for Latin professors anymore. I am not qualified to lead anything. You are the most qualified person alive, Dr. Chen said gently. The tablets do not care about age or physical fitness. They care about wisdom, about character, about the qualities the architects valued. Professor, you walked into a room full of emperors and scholars and faced them with nothing but your knowledge and your courage. That is exactly what the search requires. Marcus looked at the faces around the room. Politicians, soldiers, diplomats, people who spent their lives pursuing power and influence. They needed him because he had something they could not buy or steal or demand. He had the knowledge and, more importantly, the understanding of what the architects actually wanted. If I agree, he said. Slowly, I have conditions. Harrison nodded. Name them first. We do not treat this as a competition. We search for understanding, not advantage. If another species finds a tablet first and approaches it with wisdom, we do not try to steal it from them. That may put us at a disadvantage. The military woman warned. The tablets will not reveal themselves to those who approach with conquest in their hearts. Marcus replied, if we treat this as a war to be won, we have already lost. The architects made that clear. Harrison exchanged glances with the other politicians. Finally, he nodded, agreed. What else? Second, I choose my own team, not based on political connections or military rank, but based on the qualities the tablets require. If the second artifact needs someone who chose mercy over revenge, I find that person myself, even if they are a criminal or an outcast or someone your background checks would reject. That could be complicated. The sharp-eyed politician said. The architects were not interested in simple, Marcus replied. They designed tests that would reveal true character. If we send people whose characters are carefully managed and controlled, the tablets will see through the act. We need real people with real experiences, even if those experiences are messy. Another round of glances. Another reluctant nod from Harrison. Third, Marcus continued, we share what we find, not just with Earth, but with any species willing to search alongside us in good faith. The architects spoke of all their children, not just humanity. If we hoard their legacy for ourselves, we become exactly what they warned against. This condition caused visible discomfort among the assembled leaders. The military woman shook her head firmly. We cannot simply give away strategic advantages to potential enemies, she said. The Vexery would use that knowledge against us. The Tauran Federation would weaponize anything we share. Then we do not share with the Vexer or the Tauran Federation, Marcus said. But if the Salinari or the Bright Assembly or any other species approaches us with genuine cooperation, we work together. The tablet spoke of reunion, not domination. Multiple species gathering the pieces together, not one species hoarding them all. And if the other species refuse to cooperate, Harrison asked, then they refuse. We cannot control what others do. We can only control what we do. If humanity approaches this search with greed and suspicion, we will find nothing. The tablets will see our hearts and judge us unworthy. I am certain of that. The room fell silent. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind every pair of eyes. The politicians were weighing his conditions against their own agendas. The military was assessing strategy. 6 months had passed since the summit that changed everything. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the research vessel Prometheus, watching stars drift past like snowflakes in slow motion. The ship was small by galactic standards, barely 100 m long, but it was his Earth that built it specifically for the tablet search. Clean lines, efficient engines, comfortable quarters for a crew of 30, no weapons beyond basic defensive systems. Marcus had insisted on that. A warship would send the wrong message to anyone watching. Professor Dr. Chan's voice came from behind him. She had resigned her diplomatic post to join the search. She said she wanted to see history made. Rather than just report on it, Marcus suspected she also wanted to escape the endless political arguments that had consumed Earth since the Treasury arrived. We are approaching the coordinates, she continued, the ones from the second tablet description. Marcus nodded without turning from the window, a world at the edge of light and darkness where those who face death and chose mercy will find what they seek. Our analysis suggests it refers to a planet in the twilight zone of its star, tidally locked with one side in eternal day and one in eternal night. We found 17 possible matches in this sector, and our candidate, Dr. Chun, hesitated. She is ready, but Professor, I have to say again that I have concerns. Marcus finally turned to face her. Tell me. Yarrow Kunquo was a soldier. She served in 3 colonial conflicts and killed more people than she can count. Her psychological profile shows severe trauma, survivor's guilt, and recurring nightmares. She nearly died twice and spent 6 years in a military hospital, recovering from injuries that would have killed anyone less stubborn. That sounds exactly like someone who faced death, Marcus said. But the mercy part, Dr. Chen continued, her most famous action was sparing an enemy commander who had ordered the death of her entire unit. She had a weapon to his head and she let him live, but Professor, she did not do it out of kindness. She did it because she wanted him to live with the knowledge that he owed his life to someone he considered inferior. She calls it the cruelest thing she has ever done. Marcus smiled slightly, and yet she let him live, whatever her reasons, whatever her emotions. When the moment came, she chose not to kill. That is what matters. The tablets judge the soul, not just actions. You said that yourself. I said the architects judge the soul, but souls are complicated things. Dr. Chenyara could have pulled that trigger and ended her life. Instead, she lowered her weapon and walked away. Maybe she did it for petty reasons. Maybe she wanted revenge that felt worse than death. But somewhere inside her, there was a part that chose mercy over murder. That part is what the tablet will see. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster than light travel through the window. Marcus could see their destination, a small rocky world orbiting a dim red star. One hemisphere glowed with a reflected light of eternal noon. The other was dark as void, lit only by distant stars. The twilight zone, Dr. Chen murmured. The boundary between light and dark. Fitting, Marcus said. Send Yara to my quarters. I want to speak with her before we land. Yarrow Kunqua was not what most people expected. When they heard the word soldier, she was small, barely over 5 feet tall, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Scars covered her arms and neck, visible reminders of wounds that modern medicine had healed but not erased. She sat across from Marcus in his cramped cabin, her hands folded in her lap, her expression carefully blank. Professor Webb, she said, Dr. Chen tells me you think I can find the second tablet. I think you might be able to. Marcus replied. The tablet's description mentioned someone who faced death and chose mercy. Your file suggests you meet both requirements. I met death many times, Yara said. I do not know if what I chose was mercy. Tell me about Commander Harrington. Yara's expression flickered just for a moment. Something passed across her face. That might have been pain or might have been anger. He ordered the bombing of Our position, she said quietly, said the tactical advantage was worth the sacrifice. 47 soldiers died, my friends. My family, I was the only survivor. Because I happened to be in a bunker. That took a direct hit but did not collapse completely, and when you found him, I had him on his knees, my pistol against his head. He was crying, begging for his life, saying he was sorry that he did not know there were survivors, that he was just following orders. She laughed bitterly, following orders as if that excused anything, but you did not kill him. No. Yara was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to, every part of me wanted to pull that trigger and watch him die, but I looked at him crying in the dirt, and I thought about what it would mean. Another death, another body, another ghost following me for the rest of my life. So you let him live. I let him live with himself. I told him I was sparing him because death would be too easy, that every day he woke up he would remember the faces of the people he killed, that every night when he tried to sleep he would hear their screams. I wanted him to suffer forever, instead of escaping into nothing. Marcus nodded slowly. That is not the traditional definition of mercy. No. Yara agreed, it is not. But you still lowered your weapon when the moment came when you had absolute power over another life. You chose not to end it. Whatever your reasons, whatever your feelings, your actions were merciful. Even if your heart was not. Yara looked at him with something like confusion. You think the tablet will not see the difference? I think the architects understood that mercy is complicated, that people do the right thing for wrong reasons or the wrong thing for right reasons, or some mixture of both that defies simple categories. The tablet is not looking for saints, it is looking for beings who, when faced with the ultimate choice, step back from the edge. And if I fail, if the tablet looks into my soul and sees only hatred and anger and a desire for revenge, Marcus smiled gently, then you fail and we try again with someone else. But Yara, the fact that you are worried about what the tablet will see tells me something important about you. What? That you care about being better than you are, that you want to be worthy even if you do not believe you deserve it. The architects valued growth and change. They did not create life to be perfect. They created it to become better over time. You were still becoming. That may be exactly what they hoped to find. The landing craft touched down on the twilight zone, that thin band of habitable land between eternal fire and eternal ice. The ground was rocky and bare with no visible signs of life. Wind howled across the bare landscape, carrying dust from the frozen darkness to the burning light. Yara stepped out first. Her suit protected her from the harsh environment, but nothing could protect her from the weight of the moment. Somewhere on this world, a piece of the architect's message waited to be found. Marcus watched from the craft as she walked toward a rock formation that their scans had identified as unusual. It was not obviously artificial, but something about its shape suggested purpose. Doorway carved by nature or by hands so old that nature had claimed them as its own. Yara stopped before the formation. She stood very still for a long moment, then reached out and placed her palm against the stone. Nothing happened. Seconds passed, a minute. The wind continued to howl. The sun hung motionless on the horizon, neither rising nor setting. Then the stone began to glow. Light spread from where Yara's hand touched the rock, racing through veins that had been invisible until that Moment, the entire formation lit up like a beacon shining with colors that had no names in any human language. Marcus held his breath. The rock dissolved not, crumbled not, shattered, but simply faded away like mist in morning sun. Where it had stood, a crystalline tablet floated in midair, identical in shape to the one from Vexor Prime. Yara did not move. She stared at the tablet with tears streaming down her face, visible even through her helmet's visor. It knows, she whispered over the communication link. Professor, it knows everything. Every life I took, every moment of rage and hatred, every time I wanted to give up, and yet it revealed itself to you. Marcus replied gently. It showed me something, a vision I saw Commander Harrington years after I let him go. He was working at a hospital on a colony world, helping people, saving lives. Because I did not kill him, he lived long enough to change. The mercy you thought was cruelty became something else. I did not know, Yara said. I did not plan for that. I just wanted him to suffer, but your choice allowed him the chance to become better. That is what mercy truly means. Not forgiveness, not kindness, but the opportunity for change. The architects understood this. Yara reached out and took the tablet. Her hands, it came willingly, as if it had been waiting for her specifically, waiting for millions of years. There is writing, she said, like the first tablet. Latin, I think. Bring it back. Marcus said, we will translate it together. As Yara walked back toward the landing craft carrying the second piece of the architect's message, Marcus allowed himself a moment of hope. 2 tablets found, 10 more to find, each one a test, each one a lesson in what it meant to be worthy. Thank you for watching.